Changing pace now. Ben Wyatt, Rio Tinto Director and former Western Australian Indigenous Affairs Minister, has said that major companies are considering providing advice to their staff and stakeholders that they should support the Albanese government's proposal for a voice to Parliament. But here's the thing. Wyatt is a respected director and an Aboriginal man. He got to his post by his talent and his effort. And he now laments that there are not enough Australian Indigenous people on boards. Now, that lamentation might be fair, but his next conclusion is not. He says that's why we need an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Rio Tinto is a major ASX-listed company that has lots to say, bless you, on diversity and reconciliation action plans and all the rest of the basket of corporate social responsibility window dressing. It's one of many corporates that love to virtue signal on everything from climate change to gender politics. Yet it hasn't covered itself in glory in its treatment of Indigenous heritage, such as in the Yukon Gorge, and if anyone would have the ability to help more Indigenous leaders rise through the ranks, one might have thought an organisation like Rio might be well placed to mentor and train up meritorious types. But instead of doing what it could and getting its own house in order, it instead complains about the lack of Indigenous leadership in business as though it was somebody else's job to reach the targets it has set for itself. It has its directors publicly pushing for our constitution to be changed to entrench an Indigenous voice to Parliament, rather than making a difference using the power that's already in their hands. If they want more Indigenous directors, they could appoint them right now. And there are talented people in their ranks who are ready and willing. But they haven't. Instead, they've told you that you need to appoint the equivalent to your democracy. I guess this is just another case of corporate Australia saying, do as we say, not as we do. When will they learn that most Australians can smell this hypocrisy a mile away? There is a particular madness to corporate Australia backing the voice. In practical terms, it's going to make it so much harder to get the projects that build wealth for all of us up and running. It's yet another disincentive to invest in Australia. If business was serious about delivering upon the purpose for which they're established, which is to sustainably deliver a return to shareholders, it would not be endorsing the near-permanent change of our democracy to add an additional layer of consultation and bureaucracy, complete with the ability to challenge the degree to which that consultation and bureaucracy was taken into account in ministerial decision-making. And that's before we even start talking about how repugnant it is to give different groups of Australians different rights in our democracy on the basis of their race. The voice is a recipe for delay and legal dramas. And make no mistake, the activist class in this country has a playbook that tactically and deliberately deters investment by weaponising the cost and delay of legal proceedings. As at 2020, a small group of green activists were using a special legal privilege to delay and disrupt $65 billion worth of investment, disproportionately damaging regional Australia. Green lawfare, we call it. It's only got worse since then. The voice will be an identical kind of weapon in their hands. Tax laws, environmental laws, the Corporations Act, laws supporting research and development, relationships with state and territory governments, and much more all impact upon the lives of Indigenous Australians. Health, education, aged care, the works. No matter which sphere of government it touches, you can expect less speed, more bureaucracy, and more lawyers. It's already too hard to get projects off the ground in Australia. To add another layer is to prioritise virtue signalling over shareholder interests and Australia's competitiveness as a place to invest. And perhaps most perversely of all, that will reduce the mining and consequent jobs on which so many Indigenous communities in remote places depend. It is madness for a mining company to give this its support. It's madness for any company to do so. And it is step one of the 3 demands of the Uluru Statement. So it's a precursor to a treaty to recognise Indigenous sovereignty. No doubt corporate Australia will give that its wholehearted support too, because as the ultimate free riders, they'll be expecting the taxpayer to foot the bill. And that means you will get to pay for their feel-good moment.